Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Duke Oishi.
And I'm Jean Julliano.
In our show tonight, we'll cover the 2012 Pacific Forum CSIS Board of Governors dinner.
More than 300 people showed up to celebrate Admiral Joe Vasey's 95th birthday and hear annual insights from Board Chairman Joseph Nye Jr.
Pacific Forum, a part of the Washington, D.C. Center for Strategic and International Studies, is an international think tank located right here in Honolulu. Retired Navy Admiral Joe Vasey was its founder. We started the program by celebrating his 95th birthday with remarks from Pacific Forum President Ralph Cossa and a movie about the Admiral's life and career.
Well, good evening. I'm Ralph Cossa. I'm the president of Pacific Forum. I want to welcome you on behalf of the Pacific Forum's Board of Governors. This year, the review of global think tanks, over 5,300 think tanks were examined, and the think tank that was picked as #1 in the world for foreign policy and security was CSIS. And of course, we believe it was their association with Pacific Forum that put them over the top. We're going to show a little video to sort of give you some of the highlights of Joe Vasey's life and how Pacific Forum came about.
And I said, let's call it Pacific Forum. They thought that was a great idea.
Since 1975, the Pacific Forum has been following Joe's vision to find a better way to get countries and people talking to one another. Our mission essentially is to remind Americans why Asia still matters and to remind Asians that the U.S. remains committed to peace and security in the Asia-Pacific region. And our flagship program is our Vasey Fellowship Program. We've had 23 Vasey Fellows from 10 different countries, a number of them here in the audience.
It's your birthday, so not only we get to say thank you for all the things you have done in the past, but also we get to wish for the future.
I really appreciate everything you've done, especially through your fellowship.
I truly appreciate all your help, your generous support during my stay in Hawaii.
In Chinese, we say, 祝您福如东海，寿比南山. Means I hope you have a longevity longer than the southern mountain, and you have the fortune deeper than the sea.
Thank you very much, Admiral Vasey, for having me as a Vasey Fellow.
It was a great honor to be a Vasey Fellow. Happy birthday, Admiral. Wish you healthy and joyful.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm not with you tonight to be part of this wonderful evening of celebration over the life and contributions of a truly great American, Admiral Joe Vasey. Not only is he the founder of the Pacific Forum, not only has he served his nation in war and in peace with honor and distinction, but he's also, I might tell you, a very close friend of my family. He and my father served together on a submarine in the Pacific War. And Admiral Vasey and my father continued to serve together off and on in the ensuing 25 or 30 years, including, as many of you know, working with my father when he was Commander-in-Chief of U.S. forces in the Pacific.
Joe, happy birthday from all of us here.
Pacific Forum Board Chairman Dr. Joseph S. Nye Jr. then provided his insights on the current dynamics of the Asia-Pacific region and his observations on presidential leadership and American foreign policy. Dr. Nye is Dean Emeritus of the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard.
You have a bio in your program, so you know he's a former Assistant Secretary of Defense. Most importantly, of course, he's been chairman of the Pacific Forum's Board of Governors. Joe is the person who, a number of years ago, coined the phrase soft power. I did a Google search on the phrase soft power this morning. I got 2,510,000 hits. So we have Joe to blame for that. And please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Joe Nye.
It's a real pleasure to be back here at the Pacific Forum, and particularly on Joe Vasey's 95th birthday. I mean, that's a privilege to be here and to be inspired by such a life of service that he's demonstrated. But I'm also pleased to be here because of my admiration for the Pacific Forum. As Ralph said before dinner, for less than the price of a Super Bowl ad, maybe half of a Super Bowl ad, you have nearly 20 international conferences, something like 197 young leaders from 20 different countries who are forming networks which can contribute to peace, and you have about 90 publications a year. That's one large return on a very small investment. And all I can say is I hope we can increase the size of the investment, because with that kind of multiplier, we can get a really much larger return. So it's a tribute to the work that's done by the staff here at the Pacific Forum, that they've done so much with so little, and let's see if we can make the little a little bit larger. And that, in fact, would be the perfect birthday present for Admiral Vasey. So, tribute to Joe Vasey and to the Pacific Forum. The last thing anyone needs at this stage of the evening is a long after dinner speech. And I'm acutely aware of that. But I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the work that I've been doing recently, because it intersects with what we've all been listening to on television, which is the question of foreign policy leadership and the current political campaign. I've been working on a book that's sort of looking back at how did the Americans get to the point we are in today. If you think about it, the 20th century ended with the United States in an extraordinary position. There was no balance of power. There was no other country that could balance American power. The United States was the world's only global military power, had the world's largest economy, and our culture was global in a sense as well. The question that intrigued me was how much of that creation of what you might call the American era was due to leadership, and how much of it was just due to good luck, or to what social scientists call structural forces. You know, the economy grows, you get big, and that takes care of everything. So I tried to look at the various presidents in the 20th century who had contributed to the development of this American era, and asked what could we learn from their characteristics, and could that tell us anything about how we deal with the 21st century? And one of the things that, that I should warn you is that when you look for patterns in history, you always have to be very careful. I'm reminded of the fellow who went to the horse race on May 5th, and he said, 5-5. So he bet on the 5th horse in the 5th race, and sure enough, it came in 5th. So that's a warning to you not to take too seriously some of the conclusions that I'm going to tell you about.
Dr. Nye is also a master of Q&A, as you'll see from the Q&A that followed his presentation.
Hard power, soft power, smart power, what's next on the horizon?
Well, I think what's next on the horizon for us as a country is to understand, as I tried to say, the positive sum aspects of power. A lot of the things we're going to have to deal with are issues which essentially require us to work with others to get what we want. If power is the ability to get what you want, part of it's having power over others, but some things you can't get what you want unless you work with others. That's not a traditional way of thinking about power. Our way is to think more about the Lone Ranger rides into town, shoots up the bad guys, that's power. Trouble with that is it doesn't help you with climate change, doesn't help you with international financial stability, doesn't help you with pandemics. And that's what I mean when I say that a transformational leader for the 21st century has got to transform American attitudes toward how we understand our power. We need our military power. We're going to have competition, but we're also going to need to be able to work these networks of cooperation. We're much better at the first, understanding our military power, than we are developing these networks of competition. Just look at the way Congress makes the budget. You know, there are things which we can do in the cooperative side which just don't get funded. So I think the next thing is to understand what I would call positive sum power, or win-win type of situations. And I don't see a lot of understanding of that. I mean, a Congress friend of mine said, you're right, but I can't get up on a stump and say that and get reelected. That's what leadership is going to be about. Yes, Ralph, you can see people.
Yes, this gentleman in the center who has the mic.
Given what we've seen in Egypt over the last 6 months, would you like to comment on the power that social media is bringing to the table?
Well, I think what social media is doing is spreading power much more widely than it's been before. And it used to be said that if you looked at Egypt, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, you had a two-party game. You had the autocrat, Mubarak, in the military on one hand. You had the Muslim Brotherhood on the other hand. There was nothing else in the game, nothing in between. And what the information revolution did was create a third player in the game, the group that we saw in Tahrir Square, and give them the capacity to coordinate. Now, that's not the same as saying Egypt became a democracy. It's not. The military still has the high cards. And when you went to elections, it turned out that the Tahrir Square generation was, 1 million people out of a country of 80 million people. So when you asked people to vote in Upper Egypt, they voted for Salafists, among others. So the social media doesn't produce democracy as such, but it certainly did change the nature of the game. It was no longer a two-party game. So I think I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're in for a decade of turmoil in the Middle East, and at least as a result of this information revolution. Whether that produces democracy or not, and where and when, that's a different question. I'm a little less optimistic about that.
Following the program, we were able to get some reactions from some of those in attendance, including some worthy comments from ThinkTech's own Asia in Review commentators, Bill Sharp and David Day.
Well, as always, he's offered a very good snapshot of current developments. I think he gave us a good broad picture, and one of the things I enjoyed was his clarification. We're in an election season right now. We're hearing a lot of different rhetoric on foreign policy, and as I think he reminds us, you have to step away from that.
The whole soft power concept and new power concept, sort of the DNA, I think, that now runs international relations.
The idea that the U.S. is neither the kingpin of the world anymore, but we're not in good decline either, I thought was right on. And we are going to have to learn to get along with other people and draw them in. More important, other people have got to learn to get along with us.
We can talk about power and we can talk about where America is going and not go anywhere. Because, ultimately it's about politics. Ultimately it's about where does the United States want to be in Asia. And I think that until we decide that, until we figure that out, as a nation, it's going to be difficult to move forward.
I think it's great, and a lot of people talking about social media, how the information technology transforms the society. I think just as Dr. Nye said, that the technology per se cannot change the society, but it offers a very fresh platform for people to seek more rights. I think it's amazing.
I really enjoy his speaking. I think he should run for president.
Thank you very much, It was great to see you. Happy birthday.
Very insightful, a lot of food for thought, gives you a lot of things to think about, and end it on a positive up note, because I get a little concerned about the declinist theories, and I think that we still have a lot of good years ahead of us as a nation and certainly as a state.
I think his perspective helps to educate us all on the opportunity to look at a diversity of perspectives, respecting quite important understanding of contextual history as it's going through transformation.
Our Young Leader program has gone from here to here to here to here.
I think it was a very excellent program, and it's a great opportunity to get the views of very experienced people who are knowledgeable about what's happening in Washington and can understand the trends.
Well, there is positive things out there, but there's a lot of questions with the Arab Spring, and is that a democracy? I think it's going to be, as he said, we've got a decade of change, and it's going to go slowly, and it's going to go in the way of the countries and their culture.
We're the masters of our own destinies in many ways, and I think that's Joe's biggest point, is that what we need to do as a country is take control of our fate and be a little more, I think, conscious of what the choices are, what the consequences of actions and inactions are, and do something more about it.
So are they going to listen to him when they get elected in the White House?
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
I just wanted to say this was one of the best sessions, the best speakers I've ever seen here in Hawaii, and this gentleman, it was just tremendous.
You know, this was a really extraordinary, cutting-edge presentation by Dr. Joe Nye, who, as some of you may know, is the chairman of the board of Pacific Forum and also the former dean of the Harvard School of Government. And Dr. Nye was talking in his presentation about a study that he had undertaken of leadership during the 20th century, looking at various U.S. presidents, and coming to the conclusion that there were those presidents who were transformational leaders and those who were transactional leaders. And he gave as an example the two Bush presidents. The father, George H.W. Bush, was a transactional leader. He said, we don't do, or I don't do the vision thing. And whereas the son was more of a visionary, and Professor Nye called him a transformational leader. And he cited the foreign policy that developed after 9/11 as called the Bush Doctrine, which is in fact a transformational democracy. Those are the words that Condoleezza Rice used, and the concept of planning a democracy and transforming the Middle East. And so based on that study in the 20th century, moving into the 21st century, his question that he was talking about was, which kind of leader are we really going to need to meet the challenges of the 21st century? And he encouraged the audience, a very positive presentation, not to focus entirely on the issues of debt or the political situation or the European euro, but to look towards the future in a very positive way, and that we've got to be able to teach an openness and a sharing of power, and that this is an ever-increasing size of a pie. There's more power, more pluses, more advantages. And this whole presentation, this whole evening, I think goes to underscore the power and the depth of Pacific Forum and the intellectual cutting edge that it brings to business, to academia, to building the bridge to Hawaii with the Asia-Pacific region.
Every year, Hawaii's diplomatic, business, academic, and military community concerned with foreign affairs and trade is larger, stronger, and more knowledgeable, and that was evident at this meeting. It was a formidable group and a formidable discussion.
By all indications, Hawaii is well on its way to becoming recognized as an essential element in the bridge to Asia. This is great for us and great for the country, and we ought to do everything we can to enhance and expand that community and expertise, and to better build that bridge. Now for our ThinkTech Calendar events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. weekday drive time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week, covering business, Asia, tech, energy, the arts, and government. Tune in to 760 AM every weekday at 4 p.m. and raise your awareness on ThinkTech Radio.
And on March 22nd, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech will present a luncheon and panel program called Kaka'ako Arising, a look at all the projects and prospects, large and small, coming up in Kaka'ako these days. Sign up for these programs on hvca.org. And now here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
Bill, I can always tell when you're very excited about something. And now that we're doing this Kaka'ako Arising program, it seems like you're very excited about that.
I'm very excited, Jay. I mean, I think we've got two terrific panels, and the best part is our governor is going to be there. You know, he's really latched on to the Kaka'ako transformation as really one of the keys to his administration. I think he wants to see it as his legacy, really making something happen. He's excited about it. He has a great vision, and he wants to make it happen. And so I think we're going to get a real inspirational message from him. He's going to kick off the program, and then you've assembled fabulous panels. Tell us more about the panels.
Well, we got two panels. First panel at noon on March 22nd is a panel dealing with the projects and prospects of landowners and developers in the new Kaka'ako Arising. And they are all heavyweight people who are with heavyweight companies who are doing things in other areas too, but especially in Kaka'ako. Everybody has a dream, a vision, you know, and it's not just you know, creating sort of capitalist structures. These guys really want to do the right thing. And we'll hear them talk about it. They're visionary. I mean, for example, Paul Quintiliani at Kamehameha Schools, and he really cares about Kaka'ako. So we'll hear about how that all works for them. This is something new for them. They're in a process of developing a neighborhood before they put the brick and mortar down, which is interesting and new and different. And I admire that. They are actually out there creating a neighborhood, which leads me to the second panel. The second panel is projects and prospects of the designers and innovators who were involved in Kaka'ako. And we assembled a group of small businesses, coffee shops, mural painters, and Vicky Holt Takamine, for example. She is doing an artist's condo. It sounds like an artist's colony. I have this vision of Montmartre in Paris, you know, just loaded with artists and their work. That's going to change things in Kaka'ako. So this is like happening now. You can go down there, you can see the murals, you can see the new coffee houses and art galleries, you can see them springing up, you know, all because the big landowners would like to see this happen. And there's a lot of interest and energy in the generation that is going to make it happen. This is a new a new heart of our city, Bill. This is going to change things not only for Kaka'ako, but for the whole city of Honolulu.
That's right. And don't forget about our co-working spaces, the greenhouse, and of course our very own box jelly guys. Kaka'ako's been the venue for Eat the Street, which is bringing 30, 40 food truck folks there. Maybe those guys will get some traction and set up some restaurants in the area. I think, I've lived there for going on 22 years now, and I was a member of the Advisory Neighborhood Board back in the early 90s, and it's great to see how things are changing and shifting away from the Quonset huts and the car repair places to actually a real neighborhood.
Yeah, this is going to be great. And the thing is that if this happens the way we think and hope it will happen, it will be a signal, a message to the whole state. It'll be, stand up. We can do this. We can create as gentrified and as rich and artistic and nourishing a neighborhood as anywhere in the world. And that's what we got to do, not only for them, but for us. Not only for Honolulu, but for the whole state. And Bill, you and I are there to celebrate it. I think that's great. I'm happy with that.
Me too, and people can join us at March 22nd, Thursday, for a great event, good food, great people, terrific networking. And I hope you all come down.
And if you want to register, there is a way to do that because this is going to be crowded, so you might register in advance. It's hvca.org. We'll see you then, Thursday, March 22nd. See you then, Bill.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech, but first we want to thank our underwriters.
Thanks to the Schuyler Family Foundation, which supports a number of educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including ThinkTech.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates, MECO on Maui and Helco on the Big Island, are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii. Okay, Gene, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
You bet, Duke. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech and OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or a volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks for joining us on ThinkTech. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Jean Julliano. See you next time.